Hello and welcome to Reason News. Today we're covering a pivotal moment in international diplomacy. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa's Oval Office meeting with US President Donald Trump. Hailed as a diplomatic coup for Ramaphosa, this high-stakes encounter comes at a time of strained relations and immense economic and political pressure. President Ramaphosa's visit to Washington is more than just a photo opportunity. It's a last-ditch effort to reset a relationship that many analysts say is at its lowest point in decades. The two countries have clashed over allegations of racial persecution in South Africa, Pretoria's stance on Israel and Gaza conflict, and South Africa's growing ties with Russia, China, and Iran. Since President Trump's return to office, relations have further deteriorated. Trump suspended all U.S. foreign assistance to South Africa, citing what he called actions fueling disproportionate violence against racially disfavored landowners, and accused Pretoria of aggressive positions towards the U.S. and its allies. The timing of Ramaphosa's visit is especially significant. Just last week, the US accepted nearly 60 white South Afrikaner refugees under a special resettlement program, a move Trump justified by alleging these individuals face persecution and even genocide in South Africa. Ramaphosa's administration has strongly disputed these claims. Meanwhile, South Africa's economy is under threat from the new US tariffs. Trump's administration imposed a 30% duty on South African exports, temporarily reduced to 10% until July 8th, but with a clear ultimatum: strike a deal or face higher levies again. Securing South Africa's trade ties with the United States is a top priority for Ramaphosa. The US is South Africa's second largest trading partner, and the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, which grants tariff-free access to US markets, is set to expire in September. Without AGOA, South African exports could face crippling tariffs. Business leaders warn that up to 35,000 farm jobs are at risk if the US market closes. Ramaphosa is expected to offer Trump a comprehensive trade package, including greater market access for US goods in South Africa, in hopes of securing a long-term reprieve. Here's a video from Newsroom Africa.
Moment, because it's how we position ourselves in that conversation with him, how we assert ourselves as a sovereign, but also as an equal partner. So not going there with a cap in hand, but going there rather as an equal partner who has something of value to offer. And of course, I think the important thing as well, going there to build future relationships, to focus on progress rather than on the past.
Yeah, let me just stay with you for a little bit, because you hear Vincent Magwenya, they were speaking to the media, saying that right at the beginning, that their intention is not to spend time on dispelling the narrative of a persecution. Is that the right approach? That's not what we're going to focus on, because there's a public knowledge that it's not true, he says.
Well, the truth of the matter is, I think the Trump administration does know what the truth is. So it is not important to go and grandstand in public, and because otherwise you're going to end up in a Zelensky situation where it's the two parties trying to best each other. I think that matter can be dealt with better privately rather than publicly. I think what is public and important, and remember, the U.S. is a very Donald Trump certainly is a very transactional leader. So the question is, what is South Africa has to offer, and what does America have to offer? If you look at how his trip to the UAE, to the trip of the Arabs was, it is a very transactional, rich trip, and not a trip of trying to focus on like he personally said himself last week. He said when he was in the Arab countries, I'm not here to come and deal with this country on a moral lens. I'm here to look at the country in terms of the best interests of America. So it's about South Africa putting on the table what's the best interest of South Africa and the best interests of America, and how can we mutually meet each other.
But the path to a deal is fraught with political landmines. Trump's administration has taken issue with South Africa's land reform policies, support for the International Court of Justice's genocide case against Israel, and renewed ties with Iran and Russia. US officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and influential voices like Elon Musk, have accused Pretoria of advancing an anti-American globalist agenda and undermining US interests through BRICS. Trump's inner circle is divided, with some pushing for even tougher sanctions, including visa bans and targeted measures against ANC officials. The White House has already suspended all US agency work with South Africa's G20 conference organizers and threatened to boycott the G20 summit in Johannesburg this November. Ramaphosa, accompanied by his ministers of international relations, trade and agriculture, as well as his special envoy to the US, is hoping to reset and revitalize bilateral relations. The agenda includes trade, AGOA renewal, and broader economic cooperation, but also contentious topics like land reform, South Africa's foreign policy, and the US refugee program for Afrikaners. Ramaphosa's office has emphasized the need to protect jobs, grow the economy, and expand employment opportunities, while also seeking to set the record straight on allegations of white genocide and South Africa's domestic policies. Beyond bilateral issues, the meeting comes as the world faces ongoing instability. Trump and Ramaphosa are expected to discuss peace efforts in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, where South Africa has maintained a neutral stance and called for dialogue. South Africa currently leads the G20, set to hand over the presidency to the US in November. Trump has pledged to negotiate an end to the Ukraine war within 24 hours if re-elected, though his efforts so far have not yet yielded results. South Africa's historical ties to Russia and its role in the BRICS add another layer of complexity to the talks. Analysts see this meeting as high risk, low reward for Ramaphosa. The best case scenario would be a diplomatic truce that avoids new sanctions, secures AGOA renewal, and resets the relationship. The worst case, a further breakdown, with Congress moving to lock Trump's executive orders into law, expanded sanctions, and a US boycott of the G20 summit. Given the variety of US grievances, from land reform to foreign alliances, making enough concessions to satisfy Washington without betraying ANC principles may be impossible for Ramaphosa. Back home, Ramaphosa faces mounting criticism for his handling of the economy and foreign policy. Unemployment is above 30%, and economic growth has stagnated below 1% for the past decade. Any major concessions to Trump could trigger backlash from his own party and supporters, especially on issues like land reform and support for Palestine. For the US, the stakes are also high. South Africa remains a strategic partner in Africa, a key player in BRICS, and a major market for American goods. Trump's administration wants to protect US interests, counter Chinese and Russian influence, and send a message to other developing countries considering policies at odds with Washington. Ultimately, much depends on Ramaphosa's ability to negotiate under pressure. Trump is known for his transactional approach and willingness to reverse course if he sees an opportunity for a better deal. Ramaphosa must balance the urgent need for economic relief with the political realities at home and abroad. Both sides have signaled a willingness to talk, but deep divisions remain. As Ramaphosa seeks to turn this diplomatic coup into a concrete deal, the world watches to see if the two leaders can find common ground, or if this meeting will mark another step in a downward spiral. President Ramaphosa's Oval Office meeting with President Trump is a defining moment for South Africa-US relations. With trade, jobs, and international alliances on the line, the stakes could not be higher. The outcome will not only shape the future of both nations' partnership, but also the broader dynamics of global diplomacy in a time of uncertainty. Until next time, stay informed, stay updated, and stay curious.